Hi everybody, how's it going? Mork here, and we'll be looking at spells for Mordheim Paramod and how they fare in general. So the first spellcaster that we're gonna be looking at is actually gonna be Warlock. And yeah, let's take a look at those spells. So Warlock here, we're gonna start with the skill, well actually with the spell that he gets like normally in Paramod. In like the regular Mordheim, Warlock starts with Blinding Light. In this version of the game, it starts with the Scavenger's Curse. So the basic version, the one that the Warlock actually gets, I'm just gonna say that it's not bad. Or maybe it's just kind of like, I think maybe a more appropriate rating would be just kind of okay. This is not like really a spell that's gonna get your Warlock going, like doing anything, but you might occasionally sometimes have an opportunity at the 10 initiative difference to two-turn somebody. So in that regards, it's actually kind of useful. As for the debuff for the melee, ranged, and the word storm resistances, I don't really see it often, to be honest. The only way I actually just think of it is just as just a two-turning tool. And like mercs, they love two-turning people, so I think it just overall just makes a lot of sense for them to use. But the master, I think, is just actually much better, just because it's also, what do you call it, easy to master. So I think this skill seems like a like I don't think you really have to think much about it to actually upgrade it, to be honest. I think yeah, pretty much. Let's put this one to, I'm gonna put this one to good, probably. I mean, it's kind of like, it's basically a magic version of Knee Shot, and I rated Knee Shot as a god tier. Maybe let's put it actually into really good category. I'm just putting this actually into the really good category. Maybe, you know, I'm just gonna actually put this into just the good category. And the reason why I'm putting this into just the good category is because the Warlock himself has usually like a very high initiative. So for Warlock himself, it's usually like difficult to pull off the Scavenger's curse two-turning thing. Or it might just like not work out. Because you're faster than most people. And you're forced to have like clothes and so on. I think it's actually just fair to kind of put this into, I think it's between good and really good. Yeah. Okay. The next spell is actually Curse of Rust. And Curse of Rust basically reduces armor by 15% for 2 turns, and the Mastery reduces armor by 20% for 3 turns. And the range increases to 30, which is very important if you're doing some kind of like a supportive sort of a Warlock. Yeah, you're also able to like build this sort of a supportive playstyle of a Warlock. And like this is like one of the ways to do it. This also just makes a lot of sense in general for the mercs, because mercs love reducing armor, in my opinion. So I think that this also just kind of makes sense. So I think this one is, good, but if you're using it, you're probably trying to just kill the target. And like also not to mention, this really also works well with your ranged units. right? It's like a good way for, like, relatively easy way for you to reduce enemies' armor from range. And this one, actually, this one should be, this one should be actually okay. Because what's keeping this skill back is gonna be the range. The 15 meters range is gonna kind of suck. It's definitely usable. It's definitely usable though. But I think you want the mastery because you're gonna have like 30 meters range, and that's gonna be extremely helpful. I think this one is, good. Let's say. Another spell that we have is Blinding Light. So Blinding Light, it's like this AoE ball of light that you choose where you want to land it, and it reduces the enemy's like melee hit chance, range hit chance, dodge, parry, perception, and spellcasting. The spellcasting is actually quite relevant in my opinion. And this is for 2 turns, and the mastery increases the penalties to 10%. And the duration is 3 turns and range is 30 meters. So again, I think like this sort of a skill, like with the 15 meters, it kind of just sucks. So I think like the basic version is just kind of bad, but like this sort of a spell, you you do kind of want to play it on like a supportive either Warlock, or you want to play it on a melee resistance Warlock. So I think both things just kind of make sense. Yeah, I think that's about it. And this one, I'm gonna put this into good. Yeah, like if you manage to snipe an enemy caster with like 40 meters range, or just like debuff enemies before they get to you, like it's gonna last for 3 turns. It's gonna last for a very, very long time. So yeah. Okay. The next skill that we have is actually, spell. The next spell that we have is Dispel. So what Dispel does, it's like an area, again, 5 meters, 5-meter radius, and it removes all active spell effects, and that's it, right? The range is 10 meters, and the mastery is easy to master. It increases like the radius to 10 meters, so you affect pretty much everybody, and the range is increased to 20 meters. So the basic version, it's not bad, really. I think it's a really good choice for a Warlock. Like, just to have this sort of a spell for just in case you're facing like a heavy, like a warband that overly relies on buffing their like spell units and so on. Just being able to remove all of that in one go is really powerful. But this is just like the basic version, right? I think the mastery is actually insane, because the area that it actually affects is just really big. Not to mention, the spell magic also works really well against like enemy debuff spells. You know, just taking away the OP from the enemy and their setup is kind of a big deal. So yeah. This could be also genuinely potentially god tier, but you're not gonna be facing like every single warband, to be honest. So, like, buffing and so on. So I'm just gonna put this into insane. The next one that we have is Dread of Armor. So what this does, it's like an AoE around you, and it gives to allies and enemies within a 5-meter radius. It reduces melee hit chance by 10% for 2 turns, and it also removes up to 2 current offense points, and it also breaks the target stance well. And the mastery increases the hit chance to 20% for 3 turns, and offense points removal is when turned to 4 turns, and it also breaks the target stance. So Dread of Aramar is for the melee resistance Warlock build, which is also like very, very good. And the spell just makes a lot of sense. So like you're not only giving like the enemy the minus 20% melee hit chance, but also like especially in PvP, if the enemy notices that they have like a 0% chance to hit you, or like an almost like very low chance to hit you, they may sometimes like refuse to attack you altogether. And this is like kind of where Dread of Aramar comes in, because you're able to make them use their offensive points. You know, just take away from them like the 4 offensive points. And yeah, once they have like no offensive points, you are free to start attacking the enemy because they cannot retaliate back. So it's really, really good. And also, it also just breaks the enemy stances, right? So it's also a kind of a big deal. So if they had like Web of Steel, if they wanted to parry, well, it's no longer available to them. So yeah, it's really, really good. So the mastery goes obviously to I haven't played the melee resistance tank version of Warlock yet. So I'm just gonna put this into really good, but I think it's between really good and insane. And the basic version is just the basic version is honestly just more about breaking enemy stances, but I don't really know what kind of Warlock build would want to do that other than the melee resistance build. But the melee resistance build wants the mastery basically. So I feel like this one is, I mean, it's not bad, I guess. It's okay. I guess it's not bad. Nah, it's okay. Okay. And let's go to my favorite spell. This one is called Lightning Strike, and I use it a bit too much. So this one, actually, like Lightning Strike is the way you want to be playing your Warlock. I think every single Warlock should have the Lightning Strike spell. I don't care what the Warlock is trying to do. I think every single Warlock should have the Lightning Strike spell for just in case all of the situations, because the damage scaling on Lightning Strike is really high, and I think it's the best damaging spell for a single target. So yeah, it's really, really freaking good. But the basic version is just kind of pathetic. It doesn't deal enough damage basically. And you're just kind of like what you're trying to do with your Warlock early on. You just want to build a Lightning Strike as soon as possible and then start leveling up from there. So the Mastery version is God Tier, because 99% of the time you're gonna be using Lightning Strike, because it's that good. And then the other 1% time you're gonna be using something else, because it just kind of makes sense. And the basic version is just the damage just kind of sucks, to be honest, so it's just kind of bad. Yeah, I'll just put this into bed. Still pretty awesome spell. Okay, so Armor of Lead. That's kind of like an interesting thing. So Armor of Lead, it reduces the enemy movement range by 2 meters for 2 turns, and it also like reduces their chance to pass, climb, leap, jump down, and dodge tests by 30%, and the Mastery reduces the movement by 3 meters and ups the penalties to 40% instead. And the thing about these is that you're actually able to stack them. That's kind of a potentially like a scary thing. Because you might be even able to reduce the movement of enemy to 1. So they are not really able to move anymore. I think this sort of a spell is very useful, or can be like very useful for a ranged mercenary warband who's just looking to debuff the enemy from afar while like shooting them. And I think also just trying to like stack the armors of Bloods, I think that also just kind of makes sense, though it's gonna be like a little bit more difficult stacking the basic version because it doesn't last as long. So yeah. Also, it can be used in combination with Daredevil as a Daredevil support, since it also gives minus dodge chance, so it's also possible to use with the Ogre and stuff. So I'm gonna put like the basic version to not bad. And this one is genuinely between good and really good. But I'm gonna be putting it into like the top of good because I haven't played around with it enough. So yeah. Okay, and the last spell that we have for the Warlock, it's gonna be the Fireball. So Fireball is the AoE version of Lightning Strike. And yeah, it even has like, it even can have like bigger range than Lightning Strike itself, because the radius, it's like a sphere, right? So you may be able to, sometimes you may be able to touch a unit with the Fireball where you're unable to touch a unit with Lightning Strike because the sphere is touching it. So it even has like a higher range. So this one, I think this one is genuinely just kind of bad because the damage scaling just kind of sucks. And genuinely, about the mastery, I think I have a hard time actually using the mastery. I don't think it's definitely, I think it's definitely good, but I feel like this sort of a skill, maybe it might be sometimes in God tier, but I'm not really getting into situations where I'm able to utilize it because the enemies usually play smart enough not to group up, so it's a little bit tricky. But just the threat, maybe also just the threat of you being able to play Fireball is enough of a like deterrence for like people to do some group shenanigans. So I'm gonna put this just into good. Like, when it works, but I still kind of just prefer using lightning strikes because I don't really find people grouping up all that much. And lightning strike is gonna be more consistent with the spell casting chance and stuff. So I think it's just, I think it's good. I don't know why the Dread of Armor isn't really good. I mean, Dread of Armor is really good for the melee resistance tank version. So I think I'm pretty happy with how this looks.